Next year, we will be having 6 bootcamp series. So look for those. Our first one, I believe, will start in January. We'll let you know more about that. We're really excited about these. If you have any suggestions of someone who can help us speak for these, we'd love to hear from you on people you'd love to have speak. Our purpose of the boot camps is that we just help everyone to be able to stay on top of what's happening in the world as the world's changing very fast. The other point is that we're having our BYU annual conference in November. If you can't join in person, you can join digitally. I will put a link in the description of where you can sign up. We'd love to have you join us by Zoom or digitally. Again, it's going to be a lot on AI. Alan Andersen, who's here today, will also be speaking. We're really excited about that. So just, join with us on that great event too. And our business plan competition is now closed this year. So if you missed it this year, look for next year. If you'd like to join us, we'd love to have you be part of it. It's for Asia, mainly. If you're in Africa, there's some competitions there. So again, check out our website. We have more information. So thank you, Terry. That's the main things that I have to announce.
Cool. So if you guys are interested in joining any of our events, check our website and also mark it on your calendar. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our guest speaker today, Jared. So Jared Andersen is the Director of Product Marketing for Copilot at Microsoft. He has spent most of his 20-year career growing incubation technology businesses, spanning augmented reality, virtual reality, mobile apps, PC hardware, generative AI, search, digital marketing platforms, and cloud services. He spent 4 years in Beijing, where he set up Microsoft's cloud services in China. And in 2015 and 2016, he was also the speechwriter for Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella. And Jared has always been passionate about the role technology plays in how we live, work, and play. He has a master's degree in information systems management and a bachelor's degree in business management from Brigham Young University. He learned Mandarin while growing up in Hong Kong and studied it further at Nanjing University. Jared currently lives in Seattle, Washington, and in his spare time, he enjoys colorizing historical black and white photographs, horseback riding, and writing. So now let's welcome our guest speaker, Jared.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time to meet with all of you, to be here. That was a great introduction, Cherry. I feel like strange if I don't also provide just a little bit of background on myself, even though you've done such a great job of just talking about where I've come from and what I like to do. As you heard, I grew up in Hong Kong. I attended BYU, learned Chinese through a lot of those experiences. And I've been at Microsoft for quite some time, 22 years now. And a lot of people ask me, what's it like to work at one company for 22 years? That's not very common for people who graduate these days. So usually when I see that, their eyes get big, either because they can't imagine ever being any one place for 22 years, or because they're 22 years old, and that just sounds like their entire life. So while I've been here, I've done a lot of different things. As you've heard, a few of the highlights, I've worked on our Office business. That's where I started at Microsoft. Now what's called Microsoft 365. I did live in China I lived in Beijing for about 4 years, where I set up our cloud services there. I did work for the CEO for a couple of years. I wrote speeches for him. That was a very unique experience, which I often sort of tap back into in a lot of the work that I do. And then I worked on our devices business, both on products like Surface, but also on HoloLens for about 5 years. That was a really enjoyable new experience for me. And part of that involved working in China, but a lot of it had to do with directing parts of our global business. And then for the last 3 years, I worked on generative AI. And that has been, I think, a really interesting journey for me. You think after this many years in the technology space, nothing would surprise me, but I find myself being surprised every single day by just the pace at how things are going. And I thought it might be good if I spent a little bit of time, rather than just talking about Copilot by itself, because I'm not here to give you a product pitch. I thought it might be good to kind of set context for how far AI has come at this particular moment. And also, where do I think, I think the really big question that a lot of people ask is really, where is this all going to go? And I think I really want to emphasize that, like, this moment, particularly 2025, I think this is really a moment for us that we'll look back on, because I think something very special is happening. It's really unique in the technology space. And to just kind of help illustrate that, I'm going to do something that might seem very boring. I'm going to show you some charts, but I'm going to use them to make a point. I think a really important one that I want you to understand. So there are a number of benchmarks that are used in the AI space to measure how capable these models are at solving problems. So this is one of those particular benchmarks. This benchmark is called the GPQA, or the Google Proof Q&A test. I'm going to guess most of you have never heard of this test, but it's a set of about 400 multiple choice questions that are intended to be very, very difficult for people to do well on. And these questions encompass a whole bunch of topics, from biology to physics to chemistry, a lot of sort of very technical science topics. And so these questions can reasonably use as one type of measure of intelligence. And if you look here on the slide, you'll get a sense of where humans stand. If you give these 400 questions to a group of PhDs, doctors, people who have studied, sort of spent quite a bit of their time in school and studying, if you ask them to do their best to answer these questions in an area outside their specialty, they generally get about a third of those 400 questions right. And then if you give them questions that are within their specialty, that's the field that they have studied, they get just over 80% of those questions right. But very recently, OpenAI's GPT-5 model, that's basically one of their most advanced frontier model, gets 85% of those questions right, beating the human benchmark. And last year, one of their earlier models, called O3, beat the human benchmark for a PhD for the first time. So that's just one model I'll show you. Here's another. This particular benchmark is called Frontier Math. This is a set of about 290 math problems that a undergraduate or graduate level student can usually solve. They're difficult. So to be clear, these are not math problems where you can guess the answer. These are ones that take a fair amount of work to go solve. Now, until recently, no AI model has ever scored higher than 2% in terms of being able to answer those 290 math problems. But recently, OpenAI's GPT-5 model now can answer 25% of those questions correctly. Now, there's another threshold, like a much more difficult set of problems, about 48 math problems, that these problems can only be solved by literal PhDs in math. And GPT-5 now answers about 5 out of 48 of these problems correctly. Now, I want you to note that it's not 100%. We are not at a point where AI is perfect. We're not at the point where we can rely on it to be flawless. But that actually puts us at a very interesting moment that I want all of you to think about. You have something that is starting to be as good as, and in some cases, even better than people at solving certain kinds of problems. But it still makes mistakes. And I think that raises a lot of important questions that we will need to face. So I'll show you another model, another benchmark. This is a benchmark called the Stanford 2025 AI Index. This was released, I think, a few months ago. There are 3 different charts that I could show you here that stand out to me, but I'm going to show you this first one. What this shows here is this is the progress that's been made over the last few years on small models. Now, small AI models are different than most of the ones that we run inside of a large data center. These small models are capable of running on a PC, like their laptop, or even on a phone. So these are sort of much less sophisticated, but still increasingly powerful models. Now, if you look here at this slide, you'll see a benchmark here called the MMLU. This is really just something called the Massive Multitask Language Understanding Benchmark. It asks 16,000 multiple choice questions across 57 subjects, everything from STEM, like engineering, technology, math, international law, even religion questions, a broad spectrum of questions. And again, it's an interesting measure of intelligence. And these small models we're talking about, again, they don't run in a data center, but they can run on something like your PC or even on your phone. And we're looking here at how models are able to answer at least 60% of those questions correctly with as few parameters as possible. You can think of a parameter as being equivalent to like the neurons in your brain, how many of those you have. But in this case, in an AI model. So fewer parameters means you can run the model with much less powerful hardware, and most importantly, at a much, much lower cost. So you'll see that the first small model here on the left that was able to reach that 60% threshold, that was Google's Palm model. It had about 540 billion parameters. That's a lot of neurons, a lot of parameters. Well, recently Microsoft released this model called Phi-3. I don't know why we all come up with really strange names for these things, but we released a model called Phi-3 Mini. He was able to also score the same level, but with only 3.8 billion parameters. That's 540 billion in 2022, and now the same level with just 3.8 billion. That's a 142x reduction in parameters needed in over 2 years. Think about what that means in terms of like having something that's equivalently capable, but able to run on a smaller device now and able to do it at a much, much lower cost, but get the same level of result. I've been working in this industry for a long time. We used to talk for years about how computers were getting more and more powerful. We used to have this law called Moore's Law that said a PC will get, twice as powerful every 18 months. But this is orders of magnitude much faster change than what we saw with the advancement of the PC. All right, promise I'm not going to show too many more of these, but here's one more for you. This is the cost and the economics associated with these models. Depending on the task, or what's called the inference price, but just think about it as inference as the operations that we ask these models to perform, the things we ask AI to do. That cost has fallen for a single model like GPT 3.5. Some of you may have used this model at one point. The cost of using that model has reduced 900 times per year. So again, like a massive reduction in cost. I used to joke that anytime you sent a prompt to ChatGPT, this was like 2 years ago, we would run outside and we would cut down a tree. Like it was just so wasteful. The other joke I would make is like anytime you create a video on ChatGPT, we take a baby bird and we crush it. It's a joke. But like these things were not that great for the environment. They consumed a lot of power. But the thought of like over year, a 900x reduction in cost is really quite dramatic. Okay, last chart, and then we'll talk about some other things. It's not just that these models themselves are getting better and cheaper. It's also that the way in which these models are being applied to solve business problems is getting better. This is another benchmark. It's called the Research Engineering Benchmark. In the industry, it's referred to as RE Bench. Here we're looking at something called agents. I'm kind of curious, for those of you on the call, how many of you have ever used an AI agent before? This is a fairly recent thing. You've used one, raise your hand. But this is basically a packaging up of these AI models in a way that they can perform tasks for you. They don't just answer questions, they can go and do things on your behalf. And I'm particularly here, I'm very interested in finding out at what point these agents become useful in helping people do work, helping you do your job. So based on this view, we can now produce AI agents that can perform short tasks 4 times better than humans. Now, when I say a short task, this is what I mean. You give a human a task, and you give an AI model the same task. This is like a work task, like you would do on your computer. And you both have about 2 hours to work out that short task. With that 2-hour constraint, AI models are capable of doing that short task 4 times better than the human. But here's the twist. This is an important thing to note. If you give people more time, like if you give them 32 hours to do a set of tasks, it turns out that the humans still outperform AI models 2 to 1. So short tasks, humans are not as fast as an AI, but if you create a much more long and complex tasks, humans are still better than AI in terms of performing them rapidly. So this is kind of where we are. This is the moment that we're in a very short period of time. All these slides that I've shown you so far are showing things that have happened literally over the last 2 years. We are getting to a point where models can start to outperform us. But if we're given more time to go and perform a task, we can outperform them. I think it's a very interesting model or interesting situation for us to think about. What does this mean for the work we do? What does this mean for the companies we work in? What does this mean for business as a whole? Because I think it means that the way in which a lot of companies is going to work will change. I want to start with this one sort of really big idea. And it's an idea, this year we at Microsoft released something called the Work Trend Index. That's an annual publication where we at the company are just trying to project the future, thinking about where is work going? Where are the patterns of work? How people do business, how people do their jobs? Where are those things headed? And one of these big ideas is this idea of intelligence on tap. And what I mean by that is this: up until this point in human history, like this moment we're at right now, if you wanted to put intelligence to work at a company in a business setting, you had to hire a person. You hired an employee to work for you. That was the way, that was the package, if you will, that intelligence came in. It came in with people. You brought them on, and there's this fully loaded or fully allocated cost associated with people. But now, for the first time in history, we have intelligence that you can buy as a commodity, like you buy electricity, like you buy water. You can buy it per hour. You can buy it for a day. You can buy it for 30 days and then stop paying for it. You can apply it to a wide range of different problems. You can use it to create value for your company. You can use it to reduce costs. You can use it to provide better customer experience. And again, think about what's happened just over the last 2 years. Over time, it will become more powerful, more capable, more accurate, and cost less. That's kind of what's ahead of us. And wow, I think that has really big implications for us. I think it will change not just the economics of business, I think it will change the whole field of management theory. Coming back to the fact that we're all alumni from a management school, the whole way in which business runs, I think will fundamentally be changed by this. Certainly, the practice of how we manage work is going to change. So let me talk a little bit about what I think that change is going to look like and how we prepare for it. So I talked a moment ago about this concept called an agent. And again, agents are essentially the way that companies like Microsoft, that make AIs are packaging up these models to be useful in business, useful to go and perform and do a certain task on your behalf. And up until this point, for the last year, these agents have essentially been like an assistant. If you today are going and using ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, whatever it might be, you're primarily using it like an assistant. You're asking it questions, and maybe in some cases, you're even asking it to do some things for you. And as part of that, they might help you do like a very sort of short running type of task. Well, at this moment, we're starting to see the emergence of kind of a new kind of agent, one that I would call a digital employee. In fact, we refer to this whole domain in our work report as digital labor. Digital labor, digital employees, it just means that we can create these agents that have autonomy, that can perform longer running tasks, and that check back in with you periodically on how it's going. And they're certainly managed by people. So you run them, you kick them off, they come back and check in with you when they need clarification, or they run into something that they don't understand and they need your help to deal with them. That's essentially what we mean by a digital employee. And companies are creating today, or more accurate to say, they're just beginning to create today, this new pattern of doing business where you have what I'll call a human agent team. Essentially a person, you, who not only does your work on your own, but you call on these agents to help you obtain expertise. So not just information, not just answers to questions, but expertise, analysis, creativity, specific skills, whatever it might be that you need to help you get work done. And we're starting to, this is not just theoretical, we're starting to see this manifest in terms of what companies are deploying. Now, in this work trend index, this report I mentioned earlier, we go and poll about 31,000 leaders of companies across 31 different countries, inclusive of Asia. We do this just to kind of get a sense of how is this progressing. And we found that about 45% of these leaders say that expanding the capacity of the teams that they have today with digital labor is a priority for them over the next 12 to 18 months. So they're starting to think or work in this direction. It's not quite half, to be clear, but it's definitely the beginning of a trend. The next one I want to call out is this one. About 46% of those leaders also tell us that in some early form, they are already using agents to automate workflows and business processes. They're past the point where they're trying to calculate the ROI. They have already decided on the first right application. It's running in their company. And we were really, really intrigued by these particular businesses that were making really, really heavy use of AI in their company. We were trying to figure out, well, what is it about these companies that make them special? What makes them unique? And we've started to refer to these companies as something called the frontier firm. We use the word frontier because when we talk about these cutting edge AI models that are capable of doing all this work, frontier is also the word that's used to describe those models. These best models are essentially called frontier models. And that frontier continues to move, it continues to improve. And so this characterization is really a good way to talk about what's also happening in business. These frontier firms, they don't look like other companies. These are companies that have put AI more at the center of how they operate their business, and in how they go create value. And when we talk to leaders and we talk to people working in these companies for the last year and a half, we've been doing this. We've been studying them. We've been interviewing them. We've been looking at their numbers. We compare them with their peers. And there are a few things that we find. One is that we find that they scale more rapidly. They have like a completely different type of agility in terms of decision making and getting things done. And they generate revenue faster than their peers. And for example, it's becoming more and more common to see firms that do this to scale from their first dollar to over 100 million in revenue in less than 12 months. And they're doing this with just a handful of employees, some of them as few as 20 employees to go get to that scale. And they're using essentially AI to add to the capability of the employees that they've got. So this is, I think, a really interesting pattern. And we're kind of seeing this play out in 3 phases. The first phase won't surprise you. It's a lot of like how many of you probably are using AI today. You're using it as an assistant. It helps you get more done. You're asking it questions. You're using it to find information. You're using it to help generate reports. This is a really important phase because it teaches people what they are able to do with these models to start. And when we launched Copilot 2 years ago into the business world, even though we didn't really know it, we were kind of entering all of us into this phase 1. Like all the companies that use this technology now, at the very least, they're doing this. They're asking Copilot to help them get their jobs done. But it doesn't really stop there. What we're now seeing is this emergence of a phase 2. And with phase 2, you as an employee begin to be like a boss of other agents. You don't just have one assistant, you actually have many agents that now help you, give you different areas of expertise and information. They help round out your skill set. They help you do way more than you could otherwise do just by yourself. We conducted a Harvard Business School field study with companies that were in phase 2, with teams that were in phase 2. And we found out that a human equipped with these different AI agents are now able to outperform a team of other humans, just humans, in getting work done. So we think that there's a sort of power in people's ability to go and get things done if they're able to team with agents in this way. Now, then we get to phase 3. And there are very few, if any, companies that are operating here, but this is where we think things are going to go. This is where humans set the direction, but agents end up managing whole processes, whole workflows, whole parts of the business, end to end. Again, you're setting the direction as the human. You're overseeing what's happening. You manage all access to data. You're making all the important decisions, but you have these agents that are all working for you. And there's all of this work that you've essentially moved into a factory. And the people you have at the company don't need to do that work. These agents can now just do it for you. This is where I think we're headed in phase 3. And I think it is going to really transform organizational structures, the way we think about jobs, all the way back to like how we even educate people. I think this has really profound implications for that. So I've said a whole bunch of things, and honestly, some of them might seem controversial, some of them might even seem scary, but I think it certainly points to a picture of how I think things are going to change as a result of AI, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's from Google, OpenAI, or any other company. This is where I think that work is headed over the next few years. I'm just going to pause here, and I'd love to take questions on this. I'm happy to talk about other things. I've got some other slides we can talk to just to get into more of like how you apply some of this. But if you've got questions, this is a great time.
I have a question.
Yes.
We just finished having a roof replaced on our home.
Yes.
So that's a job where people come in and they physically do something.
Yes.
Is it possible that we could look at a typical community, let's say Provo, Utah, and divide the companies that currently exist in Provo, Utah between different categories. Some categories are into logistics and working with customers and doing management type work.
Yep.
And the other companies do physical type work. Is it possible that some people are starting to look at that, looking at a community in general?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting what you describe. I think what I hear you saying is, hey, there's a set of jobs which involve physical work, which generative AI isn't likely to augment. And then there's a set of jobs, more like white collar type jobs, for which AI does have this ability to augment. And I say the word augment, I think there are a lot of people who are concerned that the word is replace. But I really do think that there's this element here of opportunity where people will simply be able to do more and accomplish more with the same number of people, and grow their business, or grow the opportunity that they're pursuing. But I do think that it's going to absolutely affect sort of that set of people that you were describing. Did I get that right, Chet?
Yes. So I'm thinking, I have many grandchildren,
Yes.
about 18, and they're all getting to the point where they're getting ready to go to college or they're in college.
Yep.
And I'm wondering what is the easiest way for them to begin to look at what they think they're going to do, and what they might need to change a little bit based on the capabilities of AI.
It's a great question. And Peter, it looks like in the chat, had a similar question. If you're a student or young professional, what do you go learn? Like, how do you prepare for this? This one is near and dear to my heart because I help teach a class on product management at BYU. I spend a lot of time with students. I get this question a lot. It resonates with me also because if I turn the clock back 23, 24 years, 25 years, I was in school. I remember distinctly 2001, the dot-com bubble burst. And it suddenly seemed like, well, on the one hand, everything in technology was changing. On the other hand, there were also no jobs. A lot of companies, a lot of upheaval, where companies that previously existed went under. Some highly speculative companies didn't survive. It was a really tough time. So tough that I decided to stay in school and get my master's degree, which was smart. But I also remember thinking at the time, like, does this mean that like everything, all of the things we thought, everything we thought about the opportunity at that time was a lie? So let me kind of frame what's happened since. So if those of you who are around at that time remember the dot-com bubble burst, this was when the internet was becoming very hot, and there were a lot of companies, a lot of people speculating on where things were going to go. And there was this moment where I think a lot of people realized some companies were overinvested, some were, some just didn't have the right business model, or were just completely making stuff up. And I want to be honest, I think we're kind of in a very similar moment now, where I think a lot of companies are looking at AI and they know that it will fundamentally transform things, but they're being cautious because they don't want to repeat some of those same mistakes. And so as a result, hiring is not great right now. You're a young person graduating right now. Jobs are not easy to come by. There's a lot of competition. It's really, really tough. Does that mean that the opportunity around AI is not real? Well, we go back to 2001. I think about The fact that people, at that time were like, oh my gosh, this internet thing is just not living up to the hype. And yet, since then, every single industry has been fundamentally changed by AI, not by AI, by the internet. Every single company has been affected by it somehow. You had whole new industries, new economies, new types of business models that did not exist before that came into existence and are now wildly successful and represent many of the top 100 companies on the stock market. You also had whole companies, whole industries, whole economies, whole business models that completely ceased to exist or dwindled. If you worked in retail, if you worked in traditional advertising, if you worked in news or traditional media, things have fundamentally changed for you in the last 20 years. That doesn't mean that there was an opportunity, but boy, was there a lot of change. And I think what I'm saying here is things are about to change again, and it will probably happen even faster. So if I was a student or a young person, what would I recommend that they do? One is, I would say there is opportunity, maybe not at this moment, but there will be whole new businesses, whole new industries that today do not exist that will exist because of this. And second, learning how to use these tools and be effective with them is one of the best ways in which you can prepare to operate in that new world. So, long answer to your question, but I hope it's a useful one.
Thank you.
Great question, Chet and Peter. Other questions?
Is Microsoft doing what you just said, identifying those organizations or types of organizations that have a better chance of adapting to AI?
We do study it quite a bit. So this thing called the Work Trend Index, which I'll share after our meeting, I'll put it in the chat. Something I'd encourage you to read, talks a lot about the characteristics of companies that are adapting well and those that are not. Again, it's still very early days, so there's a lot still to be learned and figured out. But we do quite a bit of work to study this phenomenon. And of course, we're also trying to build the technology that enables that future. So yeah, it's a thing we're deeply involved in. Maybe what I can do is I could
Jared,
show
can
an
I have a
example.
question? I have a
Yes,
question.
go ahead, Anita.
What if there's somebody like who's in Africa or in Asia? How do you suggest that they navigate this AI that's coming in?
Yeah.
Because obviously for a lot of them, their jobs where they were maybe, doing front end for like the virtual jobs could end up being replaced, by AI.
Yeah, it's a risk.
So how
Definitely a risk.
what do you recommend that they do to navigate this?
Yeah, I mean, I think my guidance is similar, which is that if you think about like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 here, these are really the idea behind this is giving humans more superpowers, if you will, the ability to go and do more. So if you're in a situation like this, like I think there's two things I would say. One is it is great that this technology is so pervasively available around the world. You can use, yes, we have a commercial version of Copilot, but you can go to copilot.microsoft.com today. It's free. And there's a lot of things you can do with those tools that are free just to start to essentially augment what it is you're capable of doing. And then the second thing I would say is that I think that there are opportunities, if your role is one where your sole focus is or sole responsibility is to augment what other people are doing, then you do that better by also using AI to augment what you do, and you make yourself harder and harder to replace. That would be my advice in that situation. I think it's a great question. Maybe I can show an example that kind of illustrates this phenomenon. Because to Anita, to your question, this can cut both ways. Like, are there jobs that are going to go away as a result of this? Yes, absolutely. Just like I talked about how at the advent of the internet, there was a lot of upheaval. A lot of things did go away, but there were also completely new things. And so I think the best thing you can do is figure out, how do I move to the new faster than my peers? Let me kind of jump here. I'm going to share a personal example. I went on a cruise recently. Work was very stressful. It was July. I came home and told my wife, I need to go on a vacation immediately. Almost immediately. Just because, so many things were happening and I just needed a bit of a break. And so I live in Seattle. One of the very convenient things about living in Seattle is that we have a cruise port here. But I am not experienced at going on a cruise. This is not like a thing that's like very straightforward for me. It's a bit complicated. And the last thing I wanted was a complicated vacation. But when you're planning for a cruise, there's really a lot of things to think about. Everything from the weather to what's the experience going to be like, to what are the different packages that are available as part of this cruise that I'm looking at, to what ship do I want to be on. Tons and tons of questions that I had just trying to get started with this. And those questions just get more complicated the further you go on the journey. So everything from payment schemes to where do I want my room and why, to, oh my goodness, I booked the wrong room. Can I change that room? Can I ended up booking 2 rooms. Can I get 1? And then even just preparing for the cruise on the day of or the day before, like, oh, I've got to check in and I don't remember doing this. I don't remember how to do this. Do I need to pack my passport? Tons and tons of questions that are part of this process. Now, I want you to think about, how do companies traditionally handle some of these things? There's a variety of ways. People go to websites, they go search for information. They go to Google and they search to try and get people's recommendations on how to do this kind of stuff. They call their travel agent, or they call an agent who works for the cruise company and they ask them questions, and they usually try to make things right for them. But it ends up being a very convoluted process, and it doesn't just stop pre-cruise. Even when you get on board, there's like 15 different things you need, and only a limited number of people on the boat who can even help you solve these things. And cruise companies aren't going to go and like hire 20,000 more people who can go help make the experience better for people. What they think about doing, and this is actually a case where with Holland America, where we work with them on how to make this experience better. They wanted to be able to scale their whole bookings process, of course, increase revenue. And then they also need to provide like support for all of these different types of questions all the time. So they created an agent named Anna. So if you go to Holland America and you book with them today, doesn't matter what kind of question, doesn't matter where you are in the process, whether you're trying to pick a cruise or you're on the cruise and you're trying to decide what shore excursions you want to do, or if you've got questions about passports or other details, that some of which apply to people from certain types of countries. Turns out that AI is really, really good at taking all of this different information and not just providing people with answers to those questions, but even facilitating the process of booking excursions and doing some of that type of work too. So this is really some of that level 1, level 2 stuff that I was talking about that I think is becoming more and more common. And yeah, like if you think about this company, Holland America is like a 125-year-old company. They don't have the world's most sophisticated IT systems, but they definitely realized that if they wanted to go and provide a better cruise experience for people, they needed to fundamentally change the way in which they did that. And that required having people at their company who were familiar with how to go create these types of experiences. Now, does this have an impact on the people who today provide support on some of their agents? If anything, I think it relieves a lot of the pressure that hits those people. And now those agents have those people agents have the ability to now service more important customers, or customers who are spending more money, or to provide much higher value services instead of just changing people's tickets or helping them book excursions. So I think this is how some of this stuff is going to evolve. I see a bunch of questions in the chat. We can go through some of those, or if there are other questions people want to ask verbally, they can.
That would be awesome. Yeah, I think there's still quite a few questions in the chat box.
Yes. When you recommend that we learn how to use AI tools, are there any particular courses one can start on? Affordable or even for free? Absolutely for free. So Microsoft does provide quite a bit of training for free on how to use, not just use AI, but even how to go build some of these types of experiences. After today's call, I'll be sure to share some examples of that, just so you can start to learn how to make use of it. But we have content for people at lots of different levels. We even have training for teachers, training for students who are also trying to figure out how to make this part of their education experience. So great question. So agentic AI is still not common in everyday use, and that's true. Like, companies are very early in that in the stage of deploying or using this technology. So I think Peter's comment is totally valid. I think the example I just showed here is one example of where we see these things now being used more and more commonly. Increasingly, when you go and interact with customer service or need to change services, you're going to interact with an AI that is able to go and perform tasks on your behalf and do things for you, like change your shore excursions or help change your room without a person needing to be involved at all in that process. So I do think that is going to be increasingly the case. Peter, did that help answer your question? Next question, cool. Next question from Crystal. What are the challenges and pitfalls these frontier firms face? I work for a SaaS company in the online reviews and reputation industry, and AI definitely has been a huge help and resource. Learning how to write effective prompts, keeping the human aspect involved. AI is great, but yeah, if you do it without human oversight, it's a real problem. So here's one of the things I would say. If you are a frontier firm who is implementing this technology, one of the most important things to consider with AI, I'll use a fairly complicated term, but I'll explain it. It is non-deterministic. What that means, what non-deterministic means, is unlike other technologies or other software where you program it to behave a certain way, and most software works the way where you program it, and it 100% of the time works exactly the same way. There might be bugs, there might be issues, but generally these things are reproducible. They're consistent. AI is not consistent. It is by design not consistent or non-deterministic. I always find it fun to demo something with AI because every time I put in a prompt, I get something slightly different back. Never quite the thing I expect. There's always a little bit of a twist to it. So AI doesn't behave 100% consistently every time. What that means is that as a company, when you use it for some of the things that Crystal is suggesting here, you have to have humans evaluating the quality of responses. This is a process called evals. We do it extensively within Microsoft for our own AI tools, where we have a set of sort of typical prompts or questions, and we're having people constantly evaluate how good is the AI's response to those prompts or questions. And when it's far off or when it does something unexpected, we have to think about how to retrain or re-guide the AI sort of not to go in that particular direction. A lot of work goes into that. But it's a very different skill set than how you do most software development. So I think that's one of the reasons why I say there's a core set of skills in how to use AI at work and how to build these things that I think is different than what we've all experienced in the past. All right. Other questions? Oh yes, Crystal, it's so true. Non-deterministic. And you can't, I'm certain that when Holland America released this, they spent a crazy amount of time testing it and have people testing it on an ongoing basis, because the responses will be natural, but will not always be consistent. It's one of the things that actually makes it seem more human on one level, but it's also one of the things that makes AI challenging to manage as a technology, because unlike anything we've ever done in software, this thing never behaves the same way twice.
Jared, there was an earlier question from Peter.
Yes.
As someone in the instructional technology field, how does AI apply in this space?
Honestly, it's a good question. Peter, I know you. I'd love to have a sort of deeper conversation on it, because I won't pretend to be an expert on instructional technology, but it definitely merits an interesting conversation on how it would apply. I'll give you a couple of examples of where I've seen it apply in classroom settings. This is one actually that really resonates with me. Again, I help teach a class. I find that for whatever reason, students are really intimidated to talk to me, despite my repeated offers to have them make time, show me their work, even unfinished work, all this stuff. And we also have a TA who's frankly one of their peers, but they don't like to talk to the TA either because the TA grades their work. So they're scared about talking to the TA. But we went and made a chat bot. We made an AI, think of it as like an AI agent that was trained on all of the materials from the class. And it turns out students have no problem going and talking with an AI and asking all of their embarrassing questions. They can ask the same question 15 times. AI is the most patient tutor. It is the most patient at answering questions. It is non-judgmental. Students really it really seems to resonate with them. So certainly, I think it has a lot of value in the way we teach as a way of augmenting what teachers, what professors and TAs can do. And I think that's probably one of the most classic examples that I've encountered. Hope that's useful. Yes, yeah, I was going to say BYU has done quite a few implementations of this that I'm familiar with, and certainly at the Marriott School, we've done that in a number of our classes. And I think that the Information Systems Department actually made this tool so that other classes could easily use it. If you're a teacher, you get really tired of answering the same question about the syllabus for the 15th time. Turns out there's an AI you can talk to that will answer that question for you 15 times and not care. So there's that. All right, other questions? If not, I'm happy to hand it back.
I got a very silly question,
Yeah, go
because a
for
lot
it.
of people, they just get like messed up with the terms of like agentic AI and Gen AI. So what's the main differences between them?
That's a great question. So generative AI, first of all, there are many types of AI. So I want to be clear, I've used AI as a shorthand, but every time I've talked about AI in the context of this session, I've been talking about something called generative AI, which is this ability for what's called a large language model to give you a response, a natural language response to a question, or to interpret a natural language question. And when we talk about agentic AI, I think what we're talking about is something that is built on generative AI. It is a combination of generative AI and a set of workflows. Workflows that in many cases are designed by a generative AI, where I can speak to something or I can send something a message, an AI a message in natural language, and it understands what I want it to do, and then it will go do that for me. So for example, if I'm talking with Anna here and I say, Anna, can you change my excursion from this to that? Anna is using generative AI to understand my question and to also provide a response that I understand. And then the agentic components of that are actually in the background doing the work. I hope that's a helpful explanation. Oh, did I lose people?
We're here. I have another question, Jared.
Really appreciate your
so-
sharing, and I think we all really enjoy your sessions because
Oh,
really
Cherry,
a lot of
just a minute.
questions coming up. So it was very powerful to see that.
Jared, I have another question.
Yes.
So where is Microsoft? Where do you think where's Microsoft looking to head with their AI? So what is it Microsoft's looking to do?
So we're really trying to do three things in AI. One is that we think that everyone's going to have an AI that they talk to get answers to questions or to do things for them. So in the whole consumer space, we have a product called Copilot. If you can download the app, you can go to copilot.microsoft.com. You can talk to it, you can type with it. It helps you with all kinds of things. So that's level one. Level two is we provide software to businesses also based on Copilot, something we call Microsoft 365 Copilot, that takes advantage of all of the information and data that exists within that business, everything from emails to documents to business systems, and helps you do your job better. And that includes agents that will help you with workflows in your business. And these things work to some degree out of the box, but also with some configuration. And then the third level is we provide a set of developer tools and a platform in Azure where if you want to build a completely custom application, kind of like what you see here with Anna, that does, frankly, whatever it is you need to do with generative AI, we will support that. All of the sort of software development, all of the capacity in the cloud, whatever it is you need to build something extremely custom, we can do that. Doesn't matter what model you want to use. You can use one of ours. You can use OpenAI's. You could use Facebook's. You could use anyone's. They all run within our infrastructure. So those are the three things we do.
And are those all paid or are they free?
So for consumers, it's all free. So if you go to copilot.microsoft.com, that whole experience is free. There are some things where if you're using some of the more advanced features, there's a paid level where if you have a personal subscription to Microsoft 365, you can do even more. But generally, 90% of the features there are free.
Oh, thank you.
Great.
Oh, somebody
right.
said shout out to Azure.
Shout out to Azure. Yes, I love that. Yeah, it's a great solution. And I think, Anita, are we at time?
Yeah, well, normally it's a little bit over if you wanted to go. So normally say about an
I'm
hour.
good. I'm here for questions. So this
Yeah.
is really what I wanted to cover. Not much more complex than that.
I guess the main thing is like you've already touched upon this though, is really a thing that a lot of people have questions in their mind is, how to survive through this, because this is kind of like the Industrial Revolution all over again. The
It is.
Industrial Revolution that happened, and this is kind of like the next Industrial Revolution from everything I've read. So that's one reason why we kind of do these boot camps, is to help people to find ways to navigate this.
Yeah.
But what are some of your other like maybe personal suggestions for, because there's so
Yeah.
many people in so many different fields. How do you really
Yeah.
survive through this time of change?
I mean, I will say that it is, first of all, it is ironic that despite my only having worked in this space for 3 years, I am an expert. Because I don't think I've ever been an expert on anything in just 3 years. But this space is just, it is that new. It is that new where you can be working on something in this area for 3 months or 6 months, and you can become an expert because what's happening is advancing so quickly. So my first advice I give to people is use the tools. Go out there. I use Copilot. I love it if you use Copilot, but there are lots of other tools, ChatGPT, Gemini, there are many others out there. And don't just use the chat experiences, but explore. Try the different features and capabilities. Some of them will seem really rudimentary. You'll be like, oh my goodness, I'm using this voice feature and it's awful. But in 6 months, you'll try it again and you'll think, am I talking to a real person? I can't tell. That's just how quickly they move. And so there is no substitute for using the tools. I have all of them. I try them all. I have a team that literally tracks 100 different tools that are out there and that are continuously updating us all on what they do and how to use them. You guys don't have a team, but you have AI, and if you have the ability to go talk with an AI, you can also ask it for help on how to learn to use these things. That's one of the great things about the tool is it is itself a way to learn. So number one is definitely go use the tools. Number two is, absolutely go take training. There's plenty of things out there that are freely available. There's, obviously we talked about some of this about the models today in this thing, which I assume is available for free too. So there are a lot of people out there who are talking about what's possible. My one suggestion there, though, is that you will hear a lot of hype. You will hear a lot of hyperbole about what AI can do. And I want to stress, it has limitations. It still gets things wrong. There are some things it is still not good at. And so don't take what someone says at face value. Go try it out for yourself, verify the answers, get some sort of experience and understanding of like where those limitations really are. I will read articles that talk about AI taking over the world or becoming sentient, and I'm sorry to say it, but neither of those things are likely to happen anytime soon. Just because there are so many limitations to the technology that we have. And it's not just a question of like, what we have right now advancing is that much faster. It's just that you need to solve a fundamentally different set of problems before an AI becomes a person. That's not likely to happen. So anyways, I hope some of that's useful. What I can do is after this, I can share a list of resources, things that I read, things that I consume that help me stay up to date. And that might be a good place for people to start.
Jared, there's a couple more comments there. Your father has one. Crystal and Lady.
Yep, I'll send a list of suggestions. I assume there's a way, Anita, I can follow up with this group in mail, where I can send
What
you
I will do is when you send a list, then I will put them on the website and I will
That
send
sounds
people
great.
the information and then they can link to them.
Yep, that's great. Looks like Crystal agrees. She wants to be. It is fun to compare all the different tools. There's an incredible amount of content out there, more than I can point to. It's almost too much content out there to learn from. So I'll try and share some that I think are helpful. I hope at least today, what I wanted to ground you in is sort of the reality of where we are and the reality of what I think it means for all of us in the future. And Crystal, I'm not a very active social media person. I'm very sorry. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn. I do post there occasionally, but I don't post much else.
Somebody's looking for the web link. Which web link?
they're looking for my LinkedIn, I will post that in the chat. There it is.
Well, any other questions? I have another comment or question. I use, Monica
Yes.
AI, I told you. And I find that the more I use it, it seems to remember stuff about me. So is
Yes.
this something that's going to be happening with AI in the future, that your AI will start becoming your personal AI, and that's going to remember you asked this question before like a month ago, and it's going to refer back to that?
It will. So memory is a thing we actually spend quite a bit of time on right now in our product development. If you turn the clock back about a year, Copilot would have a hard, unfortunately, any AI would have a hard time remembering even like 20 turns back in your conversation. In fact, some of the articles I would read about AI starting to seem unhinged in a conversation was usually because it had just lost all perspective, because it could only remember the last 20 20 exchanges that it had with you. But as it becomes more capable, it has access to literally more storage for memory, or it can do more with things that we store about memory, where it will pick out certain details of your conversation, and it will recognize this is actually a fact that I should know about you on a persistent basis, and I'm going to store that away and reference it next time I talk with you. So, for example, if you're asking it for recipes and you say something like, I'm allergic to nuts. Well, you would hope that Copilot or any other tool remembers that about you the next time you ask for a recipe. These are the kinds of things that it will start to store away on a more persistent basis. Generally, you have controls over those things. Certainly with Copilot, we tell you if we're remembering something about that conversation, and we give you the option to ask it to forget, or even to just turn memory off altogether if that's not a feature you want. But we are finding that people do like it when the AI remembers some of those key details.
Thank you.
All right, other questions?
Someone's asking for the courses, so we'll get that.
Yep, we'll share that.
Yes. Well, if there's no more questions, we let Jared go. Charity works using AI. Oh, charity works using AI. Do they mean NGOs?
Not sure.
NGOs.
Okay, so I would say certainly, like every type of organization can make use of it. Certainly, I am seeing a lot of charities make use of it, just because many of them are so resource constrained. It's not that that there's a lack of people out there. It's just often they don't have the resources to go pay for more employees. And so having access to AI as a tool to augment the people they've got, the resources they've got, has been valuable. I don't have a lot more perspective on that without, I think, more detail of the question.
Well, I think if the questions are over, Marjorie, did you have a form to give him? Marjorie, is Marjorie there?
Cherry would.
Oh, Cherry got off somehow. I think her connection had a problem. So, Marjorie, Jared, we have a certificate to send to you,
Thank you.
which Marjorie will be sending to you, which we want to thank you very much for your time here and doing this boot camp. I know it's been really informative, and it's a very important topic. So we have the LinkedIn here, and if maybe sometime in the future when we can ask you to come back again and do another boot camp for us to update us on all the changes.
I would like that. Even if we did it 6 months from now, everything will have changed. So
Everything would have changed, yes. Yes. So we'd like to thank all those that attended. We know for many of you it's a Saturday morning, so some people were busy with family things and stuff, but we'll get the recording up and I'll let you know about the recording, and you can watch the recording there and reach out to us with any other questions.
We can, Anita, we can present the certificate and we'll just send it with Chair's signature on it.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Your mother said great information. Thank you so much.